Welcome back to the Collapse Life podcast, a thinking person's guide to civilization and demise. I'm your host, Zahra Sethna. Depending on how, where, and when you grew up in America, you may have always thought of the government as a benevolent necessity of everyday life. But is it actually a dangerous force acting against our best interests? That's a question for our guest today, John W. Whitehead, who wrote a book called Battlefield America: The War on the American People. The book looks at the insidious shifts that have slowly brought our country to the verge of destroying the very freedoms that define it. John is the founder of the Rutherford Institute. He's a civil rights attorney, and he's an author who writes prolifically about constitutional law, human rights, and popular culture. John, a very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. So let's start here. To us here at Collapse Life, and likely to many other people across the country, it's becoming increasingly clear that the government that we have right now is not committed to or even interested in life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness. So, can you tell us what happened?
Well, it's been something that's been going on for many, many years. If you go back and look at the history of all the wars, the World War One, World War Two, and studying World War Two, I was a little shocked when I did my deeper research and this called Project Paperclip. I don't know, many people haven't heard of it because the government doesn't talk about it. Where they brought in over 1,000. That's it. That's the minimum. I think over 1,000 top Nazi leaders to this country, and they went into the education system. Werner von Braun started NASA, the space uh, center,
Mhm.
and basically went into every form of government and became advisors to the government. And what was interesting as I studied it was the FBI's fascination with the Nazi police. They sent uh, J. Edgar Hoover sent one of his assistants over while the Nazis were doing all their raids and stuff in the 1940s, and they were just basically intrigued by the Nazis who wanted to implement the same system. If you
Mm.
study the McCarthy era, right after World War II, the FBI was going into homes of people. They were threatening them. The House Un-American Activities Committee. They were, if you said the wrong word. I mean, one of my friends was a guy named Pete Seeger, a great folk singer,
Yeah.
and he was called before the House Un-American Activities for some of the things he was saying at his concerts and stuff. But he did it right. He quoted the First Amendment. He said,
Hmm.
"I have a right to speak in those things, and you don't have a right to shut me up." But our government has been moving in a really difficult situation since then, since the CIA was formulated,
Mm.
and the another high Nazi official was brought in to help set up the CIA and groups like that, which do all this surveillance on us today. Now, if you think this is a conspiracy theory, no, folks, go look up Project Paperclip and all the things I'm saying. It's actually documented. It's just that no one talks about it. You don't see
Right.
it in the public schools. You don't see it in education. You don't see it on the media. They keep their mouths shut. Like they do a lot of things today. You're not getting all the news, folks, if you're watching mainstream media. And what has happened basically is the big people with all the money have decided that they wanted to run the government a long time ago. And this is another really intriguing study out of Princeton University, where they studied 20 years, the professors of laws passed in the United States, to figure out basically uh, who's controlling this and controlling the government across the country. They came to the conclusion that the Washington D.C. is where money concentrates.
Hmm.
And I was told this years ago as a young lawyer when I sued in Washington D.C. Money runs the city, but I didn't realize it was 585 billionaires. In other words, the deep state. There was that memo that was leaked in 2015 by some FBI agent, which alluded to the seventh floor group that runs the country. Well, this is the seventh floor group, the
Mm.
so-called deep state, which is 585 billionaires. And the professors, I want to read you an actual quote from the study,
Mm.
but
Great.
one of the professors actually said the central point that emerges from our research. This is after studying 20 years of laws passed in Washington D.C. Is that the economic elites and organized groups representing business interests have substantial independent impacts on U.S. government policy, while mass-based interest groups, average citizens have little or no independent influence. And then it goes on to say, when a majority of the citizens disagrees with the economic elites and or with organized interests, they generally lose. In
Mm.
other words, no matter who you vote for president or whatever, there's this group that runs the country, and they are basically concerned about two things: money and control. There was another study that came out a few years late after this Princeton study out of SMU, which studied where psychopaths congregated in the United States. Where do you think that is?
Mhm.
Washington, D.C. It's a really good study, too, though, but it's really scary. But, those psychopaths can be really cool and people love them and they want to worship and fall at their feet. I mean, I've seen some of these people that fall at the feet of presidents and stuff like they're gods. And most of these people are psychopathic. And that means that they look for only their self interest. They don't care about anybody. They can mean, they can be nasty,
Mhm.
and the things that we see out of some of the people that are running for politics today. So, what we have found ourselves in is basically a country run by maniacs. And who said that? John Lennon, the famous Beatle, who said, "We are run by maniacs from maniacal reasons." And I'm liable to get taken out for saying this. And he was taken out a little later. And that's been documented now, when he got his hollow point bullets in his
Right.
body. But the point is that we're dealing with people who don't care about life or liberty or those things. And um, one thing that is really interesting when I'm studying the public school system, and recently I'm just shocked. Many schools don't study the Declaration of Independence anymore. And if you read the Declaration of Independence, and I wrote a book called An American Dream, which goes into the details of why the Declaration of Independence is so important. But it basically says, as Jefferson wrote, that if we don't like the government, we can boot it out.
Mm.
We are the sovereign, and that's the key. The American people are the sovereign, and that's what the government was founded on here. Not listen, that so-called thing in Washington D.C. is supposed to represent us, but they don't represent us. So if they don't represent us, what should we be doing? We should be throwing them out.
Yeah.
And it's going to come to the point where I'm calling for people for a second American Revolution, not a violent one, but ones like Martin Luther King and some of the great leaders of the early past said, let's get together, let's be nonviolent, and let's push these people back. If you dare do that, though, and here's another thing, the FBI, I worry about groups that call me and say, we're starting this group now and we're going to really get active. I always warn them, watch out. The FBI infiltrates almost every group. They did
Mm.
it back in the 1960s when they would grow their hair along with the hippie groups and smoke pot with them and then undermine everything they were doing. So you have to be really careful who you're dealing with. You're dealing with people who have no morals anymore. There's no right and wrong. The only thing they want is money. And that's why, when we see what we're seeing, and at any point you got any more questions, shoot them at me.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
they've moved us into this total surveillance state now, which
Mhm, mhm.
really started zooming after 9/11 with the U.S. Patriot Act. Most people don't realize, but the FBI now and the Patriot Act can go into your banks and get all your records. The bank cannot tell you they've been there. They can get all your library records, all your educational records, and nobody can tell you they're doing these things.
Mhm, mhm.
Under the U.S. Patriot Act, the police now, under their sneak and peek clause, can actually go into your home, search your entire home, and walk out, and then they don't tell you. But wait a minute, we have a Fourth Amendment which says that hey, cops, police, stay out of our homes. FBI agents, stay out of our homes.
Right.
IRS agents, stay out of our homes. We own this property, but that's another thing that's hanging in the balance now, like I'm holding a string and your property
Yeah.
is falling because they do not believe we own our property anymore. They can go on it anytime they want to. And these are things we can talk about further on, but
Yeah.
these 80,000 SWAT team raids now annually where they're bashing through doors. Just recently, the FBI bashed into the door. I forget what, there's so many of them, but this one was really freaky. They banged into this house, FBI, and put their guns to these people's heads and were ready to basically execute them. And come to find out they were in the wrong home.
Mhm.
When you had Ted Deschler, and this is scary, back in August, about 6, 7 months ago, the FBI in Tennessee raided his home. He was a former veteran. They pulled his mom out. She was with him in the home, taking care of him. They put her in the back of one of the cars and said, "Shut up, we're running this show." She was trying to say, "What are you people doing?" And they threw hashbang grenades, tear gas into his home. He stumbled to the door and executed him. He didn't have a weapon. And again, trying to get the press to cover these things, the press should be shooting these things in our face.
Right.
There was a time when the media told you what's going on, but hey, how many people I say of SWAT team raids and having all over the country and innocent people are getting killed, shooting 500 dogs, up to 500 dogs a day. In all the cases I've seen, when you have a great veteran like Jose Guerrero in Arizona, the police are doing a sweep of his neighborhood for pot, which is now legal in most homes, I mean, in most states across the country. And they bashed through his door in the middle of the night. He shoved his wife and kid behind him. He thought the burglars had entered the home and hit him behind him. The police saw him standing in the hallway with his hunting rifle, the only rifle he had. They
Mhm.
shot over 70 times and killed him. Guess
Oh my
what?
gosh.
No marijuana was found in his home.
Right. And
Yeah,
70 bullets to take down one person with a hunting
yeah. And his
rifle.
wife came out and tried to help him. He was bleeding. They kicked her away. Wait a second. Here's the key. And I'm not anti-cop or any of that stuff like that. I used to like when I see a cop car drive by, it'd say "protect and serve" on the side of the car. I see no cop cars today that say that. They're being
Hmm.
trained, basically, military, not to do that. But that's what their job is. It's to serve us.
Mhm.
Should they enter our private property, bang the doors down, shoot veterans, shoot these people? What are they doing? Well, they've been alerted by all this surveillance that's done on us. And if you
Right.
go into the stuff that we write on our website at rutherford.org and the books I put together, you'll see that they have everything that they want on us. It used to take the police 30, 40 days, local police, to get a file on you that was comprehensive. Now with Shadow Dragon, it's an app they have on their phones. It takes 30 minutes.
Shadow
We,
dragon.
we had, this is the thing, we had a case in Texas where the cops came in, pulled these people out of home, slammed them down on the yard, and looking for somebody that was never there. They were in the wrong place. And I had the lady who in charge said, "Why are they so agitated?" Because they have everything on you. If you own a weapon, they're going to get agitated. And with this new Biden law, I don't know if you saw that, but under the Department of Justice now, they have the National Extreme Risk Protection Order Resource Center now. It's basically to enforce red flag gun laws, which allow people to call the police and say, Whitehead down the street is a weirdo. I think I saw him with a gun, but I might have had an umbrella. They can come
Mhm.
through your door and swat you and shoot you.
Mhm.
And they won't take guns away from anybody that has a gun that could be a danger to themselves or anybody. Wait a second, folks. I'm a former military officer. If you own a gun, you're automatically a danger to someone crashing through your door. So they can just make that up and come get you if they want. So it's to the point now where we got 10 years, maybe, I think, maybe less, if we do not get our act together
Mhm.
and get moving locally. Here's what I tell people: think nationally, but act locally. What's the 10th Amendment saying? No one knows what's in the Bill of Rights anymore. And I keep saying it's 462 words. I talk to lawyers that can't tell me the five freedoms of the First Amendment:
Hmm.
speech, religion, media, assembly, and protest. Okay, that's so easy. But I mean, I was speaking to 140 lawyers a couple of years ago, and I'm in the middle of my speech. I said, "Can any lawyer in this room give me the five freedoms of the First Amendment?" And they all started mumbling. One guy started to raise his hand. I pointed at him and put his hand down. No one could tell me. They don't teach them in the public schools. I talk to
Mhm.
students; they
Mhm.
have no idea. But listen here, the government does not want us talking back to them. We need to
Yeah.
start talking back to them.
Right.
We need to get control on the 10th Amendment says that local governments can nullify acts of the federal government and have our local government start saying, get your FBI agents out of our community. The FBI is training, by the way, many local police across the country,
Mm.
and they're training them militarily, by the way. I have policemen that have come to me and says, "You're right. I don't like this," because they've been in the training seminars and stuff. They said we're being trained to do combat, and I said, "Combat against who?" It's the American citizens. Okay, They don't.
Right.
They automatically see us as a danger. You wonder why police are shooting people holding a cell phone, because they're automatically seeing us as a threat.
Mhm.
And by the way, the FBI, the same FBI is doing these crazy things, lists a report saying crime now is lower than it's been in a long time. Crime rate in America. American citizens aren't violent people. There are mass shootings and stuff like that, and those sometimes are very suspicious. You have to be
Okay.
careful of that. And the man who wrote our First Amendment, James Madison, said, and I say this is the first thought a patriot should have in his head or her head, that is, we ought to mistrust all those in power.
Mm. That's a great that's a great place to start here. I mean, so you've laid out a huge picture, rather grim picture, but also I think you've hit on a couple of really important things, which is that we have these fundamental documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, all of those things which the country was founded on, and yet we instead of focusing on the government and what it's supposed to do and what it's actually doing, we seem to be distracted by thinking it's actually the people versus the people, not the government versus the people. They seem to have very handily kind of made us think we're not the problem. We're here to save you. It's those other people around you. They're the problem. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I mean, all the regimes from Stalin to Hitler, whatever, they all did the same thing. It was pitting. There's this group here or that group there that's evil. We need to round them up. We need to put them in the camps and stuff like that. And that's another thing that's scary. Under George Bush, the Halliburton Corporation was given millions of dollars to build concentration camps around the country. And I had a former NSA agent a couple of years ago who had read my stuff. He came to meet with me secretly, and he said that you're right, John. The camps have been built. They're on the military bases right now. And
Mm.
they're doing these training bases now in the military where local police can go train with the military. Um, then there's that 2030 video that was issued. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's on our website. Uh, Put out by the Pentagon as a training video, and it basically predicts that by 2030 they're going to implement martial law. And if you look at the way the country's going right now, financially and with all the things we're seeing, businesses shutting down and stuff like that, the COVID, uh, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
where people were isolated in their homes, and most people agree they could, and they would like that. They would love us isolated in our homes, watching the TV sets and being controlled. And it
Mm.
was Carl Bernstein, by the way, of Bernstein and Woodward, who basically got Hitler out of office, the two great journalists. When Bernstein started working for the regular media in the late 70s and early 80s, he wrote a really good article, and which he said that he was shocked when started working with big publications and the big TV networks. He said the government sits in those places and vets the articles. He
Wow.
said we don't have a free press. And today, when you're watching TV and you're seeing 25-year-old people on CBN and stuff giving you the news, but their eyes are glued and they're reading from a teleprompter, we're in a mess
Mm.
because something is giving them the thing to read. Are they really good analysts?
Mhm.
Uh, I don't see any analyzing going on. I just see a lot of hate, and we don't like this candidate. We hate that candidate. I hate this
Yeah.
candidate. And again, you're right. What does that do to the American people? It pits them against each other. I
Yeah.
mean, when people fight over politics, I'm going, you're crazy. Politics is just a way to get you stirred up and think the government's legitimate. Think about this: you go to the grocery store, you have a cold. How many options do you have for a cold vitamin? 10, 15 maybe.
Mhm.
And in this huge country of 350 million people, they give us two candidates:
Yeah.
a Republican and a Democrat. That's
Right.
choice, folks. And I'm going, wait a second, is that a choice? When you have two people, and I'm sorry, that have trouble basically functioning, and that they're running the government. Well, come on, don't be stupid. They're not running the
Right.
government. It's like the Princeton study shows. There are these really astute business guys, business ladies, whoever out there that have all this money and they're running the government. When you have the top 10 corporations listen, Top 10 corporations in the United States don't even pay taxes. Delta, Amazon. And the average American pays more money in taxes than food, health care, and shelter. Okay. They pay more money in taxes. And you got these large corporations that don't pay any taxes. We should be outraged.
Hmm.
Uh, and but I don't see the outrage. I see the average American watches 150 hours of screen devices a month. Now we're addicted to our cell phones and cell phones. I agree with that Google executive who quit about a year ago. He quit and said, "We've created God. We've created a conscious being. I can't do this anymore." And what he
Mm.
was saying is basically everything you're doing on these screen devices is going to be ruled by some kind of AI creature,
Mm.
if you want to call it that. And that's what's emerging. It's already emerged. It's already come forth, folks. I'm sorry. There was a great author in the 1960s called Marshall McLuhan, and I tell people read his book, Understanding Media. But he made a really good point in the book that environments surround us. They surround us before we know it. And all of a sudden we're circled and we go, oh my God, what is this? We're in a war. How do we
Mm.
get in this war? How do we get in this situation? And that's how it happens. Well, AI is moving very, very quickly. It's going to change a lot of things. And one thing we're going to see is breakdown economics and things like that. That's why that Pentagon video is worth watching. It's scary. It's
Mm.
predicting by 2030 they're going to implement martial law, and they got the soldiers. They're training for it. They're getting ready to blast us away if you object and fight back.
Wow. That's frightening. So we're talking about the elections. So I wanted to sort of pick up on that. A lot of people will feel as they cast their vote that they're choosing a lesser of two evils, which to me is still you're still choosing an evil. That's not really a choice. But that's what we're given. So what would you say to those people? People like me who just don't know what to do. I want to be an active citizen. I want to participate in the elections for what they're worth. What do we do? Do we have any power as voters?
Not really. No. I mean, who's choosing the two candidates? That's the question. It's the people who run the government, the deep state. The deep state runs the government. There's no doubt about that. So that came forth with the FBI leaked memo in 2015. So the question is, if you believe baloney, you believe baloney, okay, and you get caught in baloney, and you're left there. And I will say this: if you have any moral character at all, like I said, you're going to get active in your local government, think
Okay.
nationally, act locally, and start telling your government, we're not putting up with this stuff. We're going to have our local governments run our country. We're not going to have these SWAT team raids coming into our country. We're going to cut back on these taxes. We're going to fight
Mhm.
you. Now, here's the key. If, and this is what happened in the American Revolution, that's what they did. Local communities said, we're fighting back. And we're getting out there. We're not going to put up with this stuff anymore. And it changed the history of this country for a little while people get lazy. And people have a tendency to be lazy. And
Mhm.
it's lazy if you think that, well, I'll vote for what's his name and I did my duty. Well, no, you didn't do your duty. If you believe that freedom exists and that you can perpetuate freedom, you get active, again, like I said, in your local communities and start demanding that your so called representatives in DC show up in your local community. I mean, I got a question I asked everybody: how often have you met your representative in Congress? Does he ever come to your local community to say hi? Why? Because he spends 3 days a week, and this is true. 3 days a week, the average politician raising money
Hmm.
on phone calls, stuff like that. I had a friend who worked for a major publication, one of the biggest in the country, and he called me after he had worked for a Congress. He quit his job and said, "I work for the senator." And about 2 months later, he called me. He said, "John, you're right. It's worse than you think." He said, "Money, corporations run everything here.
Mhm.
There is no representative government. We've given it over, and that's the key there. We've given it over."
Right.
Um, and I'm trying to get, again, religious organizations across the country. I'm asking them to get, their pastors, uh, rabbis, or whatever, to get active in local government and start standing and challenging, getting their churches out. Because if the churches in the community would get active, uh, the synagogues, we could change the country. And this is the key. Most people don't realize this. One of the key factors in the American Revolution, and these people died, folks.
Hmm.
They died to get us the freedoms we have. It was called the Black Regiment. It was the ministers. They would give their sermons, open their black robes, and pull out a rifle and say, it's time to resist.
Hmm.
That's the kind of people we need today. We need people with guts and stamina who will say, I'm going to do this. But if you're in a public school system that doesn't teach rights or anything, that John Dewey, the founder of public education, says it's designed to create better social animals.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not going to be a social animal, and I'm not putting up with that kind of philosophy. Get angry. Start teaching your kids the Bill of Rights at home. We have a pamphlet, by the way, that we have designed for children. Parents can teach their kids their rights at home. And I've been on interviews before, and one guy called in not a couple of years ago and said, "You're right. A kid knows the First Amendment now. He knows it, and well, he can speak back. See, that's what the First
Yeah.
Amendment says. You can go protest government peacefully and tell them to stick it. You have a right to do that.
Yeah.
But and you're going to get arrested today. By the way, the police are not very kind to protesters. They do not like them. Okay,
Right.
and we fight those cases all the time, and they're watching everything you're doing, like I said, so they can stop it. With these, they're watching video games now, and what kind of video games you're watching, you're being tracked. Everything you're doing, by the way, I'll tell you, folks, you have a file. We all have a file now. It's a deep file. They know everything we're doing, what we buy, where we go, what we say, what we do, as we move along the streets. Uh, the phone companies are giving over all our records. The NSA is watching all our Facebook pages, everything
Mm-hmm.
we're doing, and they're tracking us. See, and so you're liable to you get hurt, But what I'm saying is, would you rather sit on your butt? And let's say there is another life after this, and when you pass over, are you going to be with the one who said, "Well, I just did my best to get on by," or
Mm-hmm.
I fought back? Well, I'd
Right.
rather be a Martin Luther King or some of the great leaders of the people of the past who said, "Stick it, I'm going to do it anyway." And they got killed for it, by the way. And I would rather be that person than the person who sits on their butt and watches TV and says, "Oh, that was a good speech by that politician. Yeah, that was a really good speech." And that's not what we want. And you want to teach your kids, by the way, hey, be strong. You know, if the public school is not teaching the Bill of Rights, you should be in those school board meetings demanding it. What are
Right.
you people doing here? Why am I paying all this money so that you can teach my kid that he can't say these 5 words? Come on. Wokeism and stuff like that. That's all designed by a society that wants to shut down free speech entirely. They do not
Mm-hmm.
want free speech because
Mm-hmm.
if you believe you have free speech, you're going to talk back. And talking back's a good thing to do, folks. I mean, it's exhilarating when you win this or that situation. And we defend a lot of people who do that. I mean, they get nailed because they did this or that. But at least at the end of the day, they can say, I stood up for what was right. I just didn't
Right.
sit on my butt and read my cell phone.
Right. And I have this right. And if I don't stand up for it and nobody else does, then that right starts to just retreat into the distance. I mean, just a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court was hearing the case against the government from the Attorney General of Missouri. And one of the justices said that interpreting the First Amendment in a particular way could hamstring the government's efforts to control speech. So, when you hear someone say that, a Supreme Court justice say that the government needs to be able to control speech and we shouldn't be challenging that because it might hamstring them, it sort of leads you to think that maybe free speech is already dead. Um, do you feel like there's any circumstances under which the government should be able to control speech?
Well, the First Amendment says you have a right to petition the government, peacefully.
Hmm.
Okay. If you're threatening violence, or I'm going to shoot his head off, or this or that, obviously they should pull you aside and say, settle down, settle down, settle down.
Okay.
You shouldn't be doing that. But the right to stand out there and tell the government that they're evil or wrong. You have a right to say anything you want to.
Right.
We defended a case here in Florida where I live at this time, where two guys were flashing F Biden, F Trump, F government on a government building. And they got arrested. I mean, and fined. And we defended them right on free speech. That's free speech. Uh, Free speech, you have a right to say F the government. And uh, that, again, you may not want to say F the government, but you can say stick it. I don't like the government or whatever.
Right.
And you're looking at somebody right now, me, after 40 some years of handling these cases, I've come to the conclusion, again, that, like I said, the only hope we have is getting our local communities together and saying we're going to stand up and fight this. We're not going to put up with this stuff anymore, and pull these local leaders and again run for office yourself, folks.
Hmm.
Get and I say set up civil liberties committees, and that's just people in the community that believe in freedom, and get them together and start meeting at least once a week. And by the way, you'll be under surveillance, extreme surveillance, if you do that. And start planning how you're going to take over the local city government and turn it into a freedom bastion to fight against the federal government. The
Hmm.
10th Amendment allows that. That's why you have the 10th Amendment. And this country was founded on the idea that local governments govern best. Local governments govern best. Not the Fed, not those guys in Washington, D.C. Like I say, in the corporations, they don't care about us. They just care about money and control. And I'll say that I think it's evil. I don't. It's just again, how do you fight evil? You have to say something about it. And some of the great people of the past that have stood up against it, like John F. Kennedy and others, they've stood up against it. You may get your head shot off. But the point is that at least doing the right thing, folks, and teaching your kids to do the right thing is the way to go. And you're going to have to start doing that in your homes because, like I said,
Hmm.
in the schools that I see today, I'm just shocked. I mean, when I asked a lawyer, can't give me the freedom in the First Amendment, I step back and go, wait a minute here, dude. I had this law student, by the way, he was in our intern program, and she was so upset. She says, my constitutional law is just crazy that I'm studying this year. And I said, why? She said, our professor at the beginning of the year said there's one thing we'll not be studying in constitutional law this year, the First Amendment.
What?
And I went, this is one of the biggest universities in the United States, one of the most prestigious. I said, you're kidding me. Well, you can't say the wrong word these days or this or that. And that's the thing about free speech. It's respecting other people's rights to talk to you. Why do we want free speech? Because it creates critical thinking. In
Hmm.
other words, if you're saying something stupid, somebody has a right to say, "Hey, that sounds really stupid. Let's talk about that now." And politicians say a lot of stupid things. You need to be able to tell a politician what you're saying is stupid. Maybe they'll start thinking a little bit if you push them. But critical thinking is the key to freedom in this country,
Hmm.
and they do not want free speech.
Hmm.
And here's the other thing, though: they do not want the sanctity of your home. They want to be able to take over your home, take it away when they want to. I ask people who own their homes, "Do you have the deed to your home?" And they look at me and go, "No, the government has it." Well, why don't you have it? Well, you know why the government? They keep it in case you don't pay your proper taxes or do this or create or break a law. They come get your property.
Hmm.
They're doing that. I mean, have you heard of asset forfeiture?
Yes.
The police are doing that across the country. They're pulling cars over. I was a guy traveling across two states. His mom to pay his mom off his mom's house. It was her money, up to a couple $100,000 in the backseat of his car. The police took it, and guess what? The FBI and the Justice Department get it, and they split the money. They're doing that across the country, asset forfeiture, and we're fighting some cases on that, by the way, right now.
Hmm.
But they're taking your property if you have cash now. And I'm telling people, don't travel with cash in your car. If you get pulled over, Wumbo, they can take it and they'll run away with it. And they're doing that across the country. Um, Listen, we've defended. I defended a couple people who were veterans growing a vegetable garden in his front yard. It was against the law, supposedly. They came and crashed it down. There was against the law in one little town in Virginia to have chickens chickens in your yard, in your backyard. Police came and arrested the chickens. Believe it or not, they were carrying them out of the yard. If we don't have, if these are not our homes and our property, are we in a free country? No, we're not. You
Right.
know, and it's like this program we're doing here. I know who's watching it in the end and recording it and making sure these people could be dangerous. Me and
Hmm.
you.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. So you've already mentioned, there's a file on every single one of us. We're
Oh,
being
deep files.
surveilled. They're listening to everything we say. We invite these little devices into our homes, which are listening devices or video recording devices. So is there any way of breaking out of that surveillance grid, or should we just not even think about it? And as you said, just carry on and inform ourselves and speak out.
It's going to be almost impossible to break out of it now because everything is, you know, the internet, well, this way. And you have, like I said, the NSA been doing this for years. Edward Snowden outed it and tried to wake people up. Julian Assange, and what they do to Julian Assange, just because you speak out and say they're killing innocent people, going nuts, the military, the Pentagon, which is again as corrupt as anybody else. 2 billion emails daily that NSA looks at. All right, 500 million textbook messages a day. They do. They watch us. They're collecting records here and there. The NSA has its Five Eyes program, and people don't realize this. It's all over the globe. They have 5 bases all over the globe, and they coordinate. And they create a kind of a global surveillance state now. Wherever you go, you're watched. And they meet with 17 countries annually, okay, to coordinate all of this. And then you have China, by the way, working intimately. Snowden, about a year ago, said he was shocked at China's influence in this country, in America, how they've infiltrated and know, again, watching everything. And that's another thing that's a little scary as we move toward a global state, and they want that very badly. And with the internet and artificial intelligence now taking over, we're definitely going to move toward a more global environment. And but what's the danger there? Because everything will be centralized by people with money that want control. Local governments they may be there, but they won't be really local governments. Uh, and they're going to be controlled. So there's some things that I do think we can do. And I tell people, and I've said about getting local communities, but you're going to have to take your kids and withdraw them as much as you can from their cell phones. Get them active into reading some important information. Educate them in your home.
Mhm.
Listen, the Bill of Rights is only 462 words. It's not a lot, folks. Sit down. And I think I say we have the pamphlet that we give out to people
Mhm.
to read and study. Teach your kids that uh, rebels are better than compliant citizens.
Mm.
Rebel. A rebel is what is a rebel? A rebel is someone who cares about freedom and his fellow citizens and is
Right.
willing to get out there and speak truth to power. But they don't want you to do that. That's why I don't want you to know the Bill of Rights. But again, if you go to our website and see all the stuff we've done on what they're doing as far as surveillance, I mean, how many people know that the Post Office of the United States records 160 billion pieces of mail annually, x-raying it and stuff now? They're
Mm.
paranoid. They
Mm.
don't want anybody to rise up. They don't want any more rebels. And you'll never have an American Revolution in this United States. And they're, like I said, they're armed and ready. How many people know that the Department of Homeland Security actually made a contract with the ATK Corporation to make 1.6 million hollow point bullets for federal agents, and local police have them now. Hollow
Mm.
point bullets. I'm a former military officer. Okay, I trained troops in how to shoot guns and move,
Mhm.
but we could not use hollow point bullets. Why? Because they were considered inhumane.
Right.
They hit your skin and then they expand on contact. And like John F. Kennedy, if you saw the way his head blew off, that's what happens. It'll
Mhm.
completely wipe you out. All you need is one bullet and you're gone. Now you have local police with hollow point bullets. You have federal agents. You have IRS agents, 79,000 new IRS agents loaded with guns and hollow point bullets.
Yeah.
Where are they fighting against China? Are they fighting against Russia? Are they fighting against any other country? Who are they getting these hollow point bullets for? And again, if you look at that Pentagon video, that 2030 video, it's a very paranoid thing. We got to watch these people. We're going to have to gun them down, and
Right.
they're going to do that. They're trained to do that. When you have these SWAT teams now being trained, and I just recently saw some of the new training. It's very, very violent for local police. They're being trained to be combat soldiers. No, no, no. Maybe against someone invading the country, but not against American citizens. You
Right.
should not you again, they're there to protect and serve us, not to shoot us and gun us down because we may be doing something controversial.
So, I mean, it's wild because everything you say should land on people and make them go, "Whoa, what? That's crazy." But instead, largely everything that you and I have just been talking about for 30 minutes will probably be written off as alt-right rhetoric or misinformation or conspiracy theory. So, how do we start to have those conversations with people who aren't willing to accept that what you're saying is happening? Even if 1% of what you're saying is happening, it's still quite shocking. How do you start to engage those people?
Well, it's tough. They have to get it. Listen, as I say, education precedes action. You get educated. If you go to our website, you'll see the articles that my wife and I write are all documented with credible documentation. It's not, we don't make up anything. I don't want to make up any of this. I would rather it not be happening and I could be vacationing on the beach all the time. No, but I can't because I see what's happening and I want to fight back. Uh, but it's all documented, and again, we're dealing with a very paranoid government. They're really heavy into predictive policing. They want to predict crime and all that stuff. And some of the studies are just amazing. 94% of the people, listen to this, in predictive policing, 94% of the people that were accused of a crime in Washington, D.C., only 2% were arrested after the so-called predictive
Hmm.
crimes. In other words, AI is going to be predicting he is a criminal. He must be controlled.
Mm.
And they're going to be going out and doing it. They'll follow the orders. And again, like I say, when I'm helping former veterans getting shot, beaten up, arrested, and all that stuff, just because they go on the websites and say the government stinks. Uh, Listen, I had a former veteran, okay, a Vietnam veteran, who uh, sent me a one paragraph, it was 3 sentences, email, in which he said, "It's amazing they're conducting these drills, in my area." This was in Virginia, by the way, and really interesting, because he liked it. He thought it was a pretty good idea, and you could see the helicopters and stuff. And what happened? The next day, two FBI agents showed up at his door. They were armed in their black outfits, men in black, and told him that if he ever did that again, they were going to deport him from the United States.
Oh
They
wow.
threatened him. Again, they're watching, especially veterans.
Mm.
Veterans are considered basically potential extremists, and no. And there's another thing that people don't know: the Department of Homeland Security is doing threat scores on homes across America. They go from red to green, or green from red to whatever. But if you own a weapon from green to red, if you own a weapon, by the way, you're automatically a red. And
Mm.
the police will have that on their cell phones, that Shadow Dragon app. And they come to your door and you're there. They know you have a weapon and they see you getting agitated. You might get shot, kicked, or thrown down, or whatever. And again, the government should not be doing that to you.
Mm.
It's none of their damn business whether you own a weapon or not, or what you say or what you do. Okay, they're there again to help you. And are they really protecting us when they're taxing us to the death and they're bombing whatever? We don't know what they're doing. All they've got a really good idea, and that is we can control people with the screen devices. We can feed them baloney and they'll listen.
Yeah.
And you know something? American people are very lazy. The only way you can wake them up is people getting, like I said, in the local communities and getting some of this information out there. And
Hmm.
again, it's not conspiracy theory, folks. It's all documented.
Tell us about the Rutherford Institute. What is it? What do you do? When did you found it? Why did you found it?
I founded the Rutherford Institute in 1982 because I was a young lawyer. I just gotten out, I was defending people, and I had this idea I could help people, but I wasn't getting paid. And I had a couple kids and a wife, and I had so many people coming to me. I said I need to start a group that will defend anybody for any reason, basically. And so that was it. It's a nonprofit, and we exist off of donations. And when we handle a case, it's no charge to the client because listen, lawyers are very expensive, by the way, and I get more complaints about how expensive lawyers are today. And we take the cases, constitutional cases, and like I say, we do a lot of cases across the country, a lot of free speech cases, and we do a lot of educational materials like the pamphlets for the First Amendment, the
Mm.
Fourth Amendment, teaching people their rights, and I want to educate people so that people will be able to finally say, "I know what the truth is." By the way, and this is will give you a story. There was a fellow who called me and says, "Your pamphlet works." He was on the street corner picketing in a big city, and he had this sign. I don't know what it said. I forget. But the police pulled up and said, "What are you doing out here?" He goes, "Let me read this to you." And he read the First Amendment to him, and he said the cops looking. He goes, "Wow, okay, we get it." They got back in the car and drove off. So again, that's a small instance of what you can
Mm.
do, but they educated the police then on the First Amendment.
Right.
You can do it. It's but you have to do it, and that's going to take people getting up. Like I say, get your kids. I say give 1/3 of the time you're watching a screen device, get off the screen devices, and give us for freedom, folks. Get down to your
Mm.
local city councils and take them over for freedom.
Um, it's amazing, and I think the education piece of it is really incredible. One thing I wanted to ask about is certainly during COVID, we've seen, for example, a lot of doctors who were willing to speak out against the sort of medical orthodoxy, the mainstream narrative. They were persecuted, and medical licensing boards went after them, et cetera, et cetera. Are you seeing the same thing in the legal community? Are there attorneys who are going against the grain, also being persecuted or having their law licenses attacked?
Not with the ones we work with because they're well known for doing it. We have some of the bigger firms actually work with us on the amicus briefs with the Supreme Court and our Supreme Court cases, and they respect us because they see what we do. We haven't run into much of that, no. But you know, because standing up for the Constitution is a great thing for lawyers to do, and
Mm.
I'm proud of some of the lawyers out there that we work with, and I've worked with them for many years now. They handle these cases. They don't charge people. They stand up for their rights, and um, that's a great thing for their communities and for their law firms and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
I haven't seen much of that. No, I think it's again, if you mess with a lawyer, you got the Rutherford Institute and a few other groups that are going to come after you.
Yeah, great. You mentioned the resources that are available on your website. You mentioned that people should go and inform themselves about the Bill of Rights. Are there other books or resources or things that you think that people should be reading?
Well, I think that our website's definitely going to be plenty to read because we do really detailed articles. My book, Battlefield America, goes into detail a lot of this stuff. And I wrote a book called Government of Wolves, which goes into all the militarized police stuff, which is scary. And I mean, we have all kinds of assets on our website, which you should go
Mm.
to. And it's a freedom website. It's there to promote freedom. And like I say, education precedes action. You have to get educated first to know what you're talking about, and
Yeah.
then get out there and kick butt for freedom.
Fantastic. What gives you hope? Who do you read that you nod along to and go, yes?
Who do I? It's authors of the past who predicted all this: George
Mm.
Orwell, Aldous Huxley, Philip K. Dick, that saw all this coming and was trying to warn people through their fiction books. And Hannah Arendt, which is a great lady who wrote a number of good books on these things, and just again a former concentration camp victim. She's Eric Fromm, another good writer who saw what happened in Nazi Germany. As I say, Hitler is standing in the shadows, folks, and it's getting
Mm.
scary. And everything that's been replicated in the past is being replicated now. It's just we're starting to repeat ourselves, and you're going to see some people really hurt. And like I say, when I have the NSA agents telling me that the concentration camps are ready and they're going on military bases, why?
Yeah. But as you said, it's not too late to stand up for freedom.
No, never too late. I mean, Dietrich Bonhoeffer stood up against Hitler and he got executed for it, just speaking out against Hitler. Uh, those are people I admire in the past who've had the strength to say, stick it, government. I'm going to fight back now. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we have freedom in our land. And that's what we need. Like I say, a true rebel is someone who believes in freedom and the freedom of his fellow citizens and fights for it. You may get shot or beat up for it or uh, ostracized, but that's much better than doing nothing. I'm serious. Yes. Once the freedom light bulb goes on in your heart, it's very difficult to push it back.
Well, John, I thank you for fighting for our freedoms and for helping to educate all of us about what we need to be standing up for. Any final words for our audience before we go?
We have a very short time, folks. If you believe in the future of your children or your grandchildren, it's time to act now.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, John. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
We're so grateful to John for coming on and sharing all those insights and all those details and statistics. And we hope that you will go and visit the Rutherford Institute and make sure that you inform yourself as he suggested. We work hard to bring you amazing guests like John every week, and we couldn't do it without your help and support. So please give us a like and a share, and also head over to collapselife.substack.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Join the Collapse Life community. If you're on Twitter, follow us there too at collapse_life. If this is the first time you're joining us, we welcome you and we thank you for being here. Collapse Life is your home for information to help you understand and prepare for our changing world. We like to call it a lifestyle channel for a dying lifestyle. We hope you'll join us again next week. And until then, just remember, keep your chin up. It's only collapse. See you soon.